Hello and welcome to Learn Data. I'm Nilesh and today we are going to continue learn about pandas. In this video, we'll look at how we can reshape data frame using melt, wide to long, group, stack, unstack methods. We have looked at stack unstack in previous video. In this one, we'll see how we can use it in a particular data frame along with GroupBy. Additionally, we'll look at how we can use crosstabs and then also look at how we can create categorical variables into dummy variables, which would be ones and zeros. And the reason why we do that is because when we will eventually learn about machine learning modeling, there we need to convert categorical variables into binary variables. Those are integers and therefore those can be used as an input to a machine learning algorithm. So let's go ahead and start Jupyter notebook. Here I've already created the notebook and imported three libraries: NumPy, Pandas and matplotlib.pyplot. And for data frames we have the DataFrame df1 with 4 columns, as you can see here, and this second DataFrame df7 has a unique set of columns, and we will be using that in the wide to long example. Here the difference is that we have car, and next the other part of that column name is a year, which is 1990. And what the reason for having that particular type of column name is because we are going to separate these out. We'll separate the car out from the year 1990 and put them in separate columns and rows. We'll get that to a minute. So let's get started, and first we'll try to reshape the data frame using melt. Now for melt, what we need to type is df1.melt. Let's first look at how the data frame looks, and this is what we have. We have the month column, the day column, and then we have two columns which are A and B for numeric values. Now for melt, we'll type df is equal to df1.melt id underscore vars is equal to month and day. So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to convert these columns A and B into a separate column, and then put the numeric values in a single column called value, and we'll leave the month and day column intact as they are. So the id vars tells that those columns need not be used. And for var name, we are going to use chars or chars. What this column would be, it will have AB repeated for that column. So as you can see here, we have the month column, day column, and then the characters, which is A and B repeated, and the values within A and B are now stored in the column value, which is just one numeric column. And this type of melting procedure is really helpful in certain cases where we are trying to create a plot, such as a bar plot where the bars need to be side by side, or overlay of histograms. So this type of formatting really helps there. Now let's move on and look at wide to long. Wide underscore to underscore long, and the name wide to long here is we are converting a wide data frame, that is a data frame with a lot number of columns, to a long data frame, which is a data frame that has a lot number of rows. And to do that, we type dpd.wide to long, and let's pull the data frame here so that we can type the column names. And for this, we are using df7. Okay, this is the data frame we are using. Now in this data frame we need stub names, and what stub names is the part that we need to separate out from the column names. So here we are going to separate out car and bike, and that's what we are going to put in here. We have car and we have the bike, and we'll give ID names. So indices I and J for rows, those will be 2 levels. So here we have I, and then we also give J, which will have the year, which would be the second part that will be separated out from the column names. And when we run this, here we can see that we have these columns rating end use surface as is. So end use rating surface as is. However, the car part and the bike part is now separated, and the values are stored here, car and bike, which is right here, and the year column is put as a separate column. So let's look at the very first row here. So 1990 car 25. So 1990 car right here, it's 25, and that's how the values are distributed in this particular format. So a wider data frame, which is this, is now converted to a longer data frame, which is here. Next, let's look at interesting topic, which is group by, and this is something that I've used on a regular basis. A simplest group by is to use get a sum or get a mean based on a data set. So here we have this data frame, and if you are trying to get a sum of all the values for A for each of those months, then what we can do is type df1.groupby, and here we'll type the month for which we are trying to create the group, and then the value column name, and then finally the sum. So when we run this, here we are getting the group by for the month of January 6. So 3 plus 2 plus 1, so that's 3 plus 3 6. And for month of March we have 6 plus 4 10 plus 1 5 15. So that's how we can get the sum for each of those months. Here the sum can be replaced by other type of statistic you want. If you need mean, then that can be done, and here we can go ahead and add additional columns as well if that is needed. However, here the mean would be just the same number because the Monday is not repeating more than once in January, so the numbers stay the same. Now this was when we had just a single level of index. What happens if we have multiple levels of column names and multiple levels of row indices? For that we can still use group by. The method is little different, and for that what we are going to do is we are going to modify our existing df1 data frame, which is this one, to a new data frame which has 2 additional columns, and we'll put the indices also in there. So what we can do is go ahead and create a copy of this, and then create 2 columns dfn. We'll create a column C, which is dfn, and this is going to be a double of column A, and similarly we'll create a column D, which is also a double of column, in this case B. And that, so in addition to these 2 columns we need to create indices. So again, the dfn is equal to dfn.set index, and we are going to set index for, we are going to convert the columns month and day to row indices. So month would be at level 0 and day would be at level 1 for the rows. And for columns we are going to create a new layer using the pd.multiindex from product command. So here what we need to give within a list, we need to give 2 tuples. So First one is for the level 0, and this is, let's say, this is upper and lower. And then for the next level, we'll override the ABCD. So we are creating ABCD right here, and we are going to override that. So why don't we do this? We can go ahead and run this just so that you see what we are doing. We added two columns here. Now what we are trying to do is we converted these to the index, as we can see, and now we are going to convert this ABCD to AB as a subset of lower and upper, so A and B. Now if we look at what a DFN looks like, we'll see that in a minute. Let's go ahead and give names to these as well. So this can be the floor, upper floor, lower floor, and this could be AB unit. So now, sorry, did I miss something? pd.multiindex from product, and then we start tuple here, and we have the lower, and then we have the upper, and we have these two units, and then names, we have floor and unit, and then this columns. Okay, now as you can see, we have the floor, upper and lower units AB. So lower has units A and units B, same thing, upper as unit A, unit B, and so on and so forth. Now let's look at how we can use the group by in this case. So if we'll first run through level 1 and level 0 for the columns, and then we'll run through level 0 and level 1 for rows using group by and also using stacking unstacking methods. So df is equal to dfn.groupby, and this would be, we are going to group by a month, in this case we are going to group by level, and level is equal to 1, axis is equal to 1. What this tells is when we say axis is equal to 1, we are talking about column names, and when we are talking about level 1, this is the innermost one here, which is AB, and we will go ahead and take the mean of this. As you can see, for level 1, which is AB, we have those, and we got the mean by those two, so we are ignoring the lower and upper in this case. So for January, Monday, we have 1 and 2 for A, so the mean of that would be 3 by 2, and that's 1.5. Similarly for B, we have 10 plus 20, that's 30, divided by 2 is 15, and that's what we have down below. So this is how we would do group by at level 1. Similarly, let's look at how we can do the group by for level 0 for axis 1. As you can see here, we have now the lower and upper, but we don't have the AB, and for the upper and lower, now the mean would be 1 plus 10, 11, divided by 2, we have 5.5 here, and similarly all other values. Now moving on, let's go ahead and look at axis 0. What happens at axis 0, and then we'll come back and look at the stacking unstacking. So if we go back and use level 0, axis 0, and run this, as you can see now, if we pull the df1 here, what we are dfn, what we are trying to do here is level 0 is month when we are looking at axis 0, and for January, so the column names are intact as they were. So what we are essentially doing is taking a mean of this 1, 2 and 3. So that's 3 plus 3 is 6, divided by 3 is 2, and that's what we have here, and similarly for all other values. Okay, so we looked at level 0 for axis 0. Now what we can do is go a step further and look at level 1. So here when we type level 1 on axis 0, so as expected, the level 1 now is the day column, day index column, and for Monday lower we have 1 and 4. So 1 plus 4 is 5, divided by 2 is 2.5, and that's what we have here. So here the month is ignored, as you cannot see it in the output data frame. So that's how we can use group by along with level and axis to aggregate the values based on the levels. Now let's look at how we can use stacking and unstacking to get similar results. So we'll scroll back up to where we have the group by code written. For example, this one. Now below this we'll use the stacking and unstacking to get same output. So what we need is df is equal to stack dfn dot stack, and we are going to use the same level 1. Level is equal to 1, and then mean is axis is equal to 1, and then unstack and we run df. So as you can see, the numbers are the same, and the way this worked is, if we look at it step by step, when we do dfn dot stack and when we say level is equal to 1, what we are actually doing is we are taking the level 1 for dfn. So if you look at dfn, this is dfn, and for axis 1, which is we are looking at the column names, and when we say level 1, we are looking at this ABAB. And what we did was, when we stack the ABAB, we are basically taking the column names and converting them into values for rows. Okay, and the name for that index column is unit, and now that becomes the row index column name unit. So it's now a row. These values are row, and these are row indices now. Next, when we go ahead and say mean axis is equal to 1, we are getting the mean values. So let's keep that, and below that we can create another cell and type this and type mean of 1. So here, as you can see, we are getting the mean for January, Monday, A, and this is 1 plus 2 is 3 by 2 is 1.5. Similarly for January, Monday, B, we have 10 plus 20, 30, and divided by 2 is 15. So this is how we are calculating the mean. And after this, when we type unstack, what we are essentially doing is we are moving the columns back up. So when we run this, the ABAB that was the unit right here, that is now unstacked and put back as column name, and that's what we see here. So that's how we can use the unstack and stacking method similar to group by to get similar aggregation of a data frame. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave that as there. Now next we can look at this data frame right here and see if we can use the stacking and unstacking to get similar output. Here we'll write df is equal to dfn dot group by, sorry, this is for stacking, and so it will be dfn dot stack level is equal to 0 and dot mean axis is equal to 1 and dot unstack df. and as you can see, it's the same output that we get by GroupBy and by stack unstack method. Now moving on to looking at the row index columns, which are here. Here we are talking about axis 0, and there is a slight change when we use the stacking unstacking. When we are dealing with rows, we want to use the unstack first. First we have to unstack and then stack. So when we look at the DFN, okay, this is how our DFN looks. So when we are looking to get the same result using the stack unstack method, we first need to unstack the level and then stack it again after getting the means. So what we would do is dfn dot group dfm dot unstack level is equal to 1, and this time we are going to give mean and axis is equal to 0. So when we do this, what we are essentially doing is we are taking the level 1, which is in this case it's the day column of index, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we are putting them in column names, and then now we are going to go ahead and get the mean of along axis 1. So let's copy this, paste it here. I'm gonna leave that as it was, and here now we can see that we have the mean for entire January, ignoring the Monday, Tuesday, everything. And now if we do the unstack, sorry, we need axis, we are working with axis 0, so we need to run this on axis 0, sorry. Okay, yep, now it makes sense. So now we have the lower A Monday, so we have lower A Monday, and this is now we get the mean of 2.5, and that's based on these two. So we have 4 plus 1, 5 divided by 2.5, and similarly for Thursday we have 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. Now if we unstack this and we unstack, we want to put the 0 and 1 back up, because these two columns for the rows, floor and unit, when we do that we get the output that is this, and that's exactly what we had up above, which was this one, which we got by using the GroupBy for level 1 and axis 0. Okay, and the last, let's try level 0 and axis 0 and see what we get. So we'll have dfn dot first we'll unstack, and we'll unstack the level 0, and then we get the mean for axis is equal to 0, and then we are going to unstack and put the columns back. Okay, so this has to be 0. Okay, and so here we get the similar output as, okay, this was GroupBy. So this is the similar output we get: 2, 2, 5, 2, 5, 20, 50, 20, 50. And the difference is that these are still integers and these have now been converted to float. So that was the only difference there. Now moving on, let's look at how we can use the function of getting dummies and how we can create dummy variables. And the data frame that we'll use for this is the df1, which is this one. Now the reason why we get dummy variables is, first of all, what is dummy variable? Dummy variable is converting a categorical column to ones and zeros, or in ones and zeros for now. And here we have from the column month, which has the category January and March. So when we create dummy variables, what's going to happen is two new columns would be created. One would be January, another would be March, and in each of those columns, wherever Jan appears for the January column, it will be 1, else it will be 0. Similarly for March column, wherever there is MAR, it will be 1, otherwise it will be 0. So let's try to do that. pd.get_dummies df1, and columns, we are going to give the month column for now, and let's run this. So as you can see, the month column is now converted to these two columns, month_Jan and March, and the first three rows has JAN, and therefore we have ones, others do not, and therefore we have 0. Similarly for March column, we have March for 3, 4, 5, and therefore we have ones for 3, 4, 5, whereas we have zeros for the top three because there is no March written in there. Now what we can do here is we can also modify the prefix. So here it says month, we can change that and we can add a prefix there. Let's say something like m underscore, and that way the column that we created, we can have abbreviation, can be shorter, or that can be custom abbreviation for the dummy columns that are created. Now beyond this, we can also use the multiple columns and we can convert them to dummy columns at once. So let's say for example we would like to convert the day column as well. So in addition to month, we can add day, and then here we need to provide the prefix, and for that we'll provide it in a list form, and let's say m underscore and d underscore, and when we run this we get AB. Those are the only two columns that remain, and we have m underscore and then we have the d underscore and ones and zeros, where depending on if the value exists in that column or it does not. Moving on, we can also provide the prefix in a different way. For example, giving a dictionary, for instance. So here instead of this list, we can delete the list and put a dictionary in there. For dictionary, we have to provide key value pairs, as you may remember. And for month, we can say we want m underscore, and then the second key value pair would be day, and for day we want d underscore. So once we put these, now we have the similar data frame, but it was created by using prefixes that were written in a dictionary form, as you can see here. Moreover, there is one very important thing I want to mention, that if you do not understand it completely right now, that's okay, and that is, we are going to drop one of the two dummy variables that were created for each column. So for January March, we are going to drop the Jan column. For Monday, Thursday, Wednesday, we are going to drop the d underscore Monday column. And to do that, we can pull the same here, and we can specify drop underscore first is equal to true. As you can see, we dropped January and we dropped Monday. The reason why we do this is to avoid collinearity, and if you do not understand that right now, that's perfectly okay, but just to know that it's important that we drop one column when we are creating the dummy variables, and that's why and to do that we can use drop underscore first is equal to true as a parameter. Finally, let's look at how we can use crosstabs to create a tabulated form of frequencies or aggregated values between columns. Crosstabs, And for this one we'll use the data frame that we have been using, which is the df1. Okay, now if we do a pd df is equal to pd dot crosstab and df1, which is the month column, and then we can give df1, and this could be the day column. And when we run this, what we are getting, this is called a crosstab. So basically table with row and column names that have aggregated values in the middle right here. So here 111, and that's because for January, how many times does Monday occur? It occurs only once. Or vice versa, for Monday, how many times does January occurs? It occurs only once, and therefore it's just a count of 111. Had we had 2 Jan Mondays here, then we would get a count of 2. Now we can also use these columns A and B, which are numeric columns, and use a statistics such as sum or mean to get the values. Let's try that. df is equal to pd dot crosstab and df1, again this is going to be the month, and then we have df1, again this is the day, and finally we are going to add values. So values is equal to, this is df and df1, and we are going to use the a column for values, and aggregated function that we'll give here right now is sum. And once this is ready, we can see that what we did was we created a crosstab which has January and March as a row, and then you have Monday, Thursday, Wednesday as column names, and for each month we did a total. So again here the values are just one value, therefore the sum is going to be just 1, and therefore we just get a 1 here. But if there were multiple columns, multiple repeats of January Monday for A, then those would have been added and we have gotten aggregate number here. Similarly to sum, we can use mean or other statistic that is needed to get the crosstab values. Okay, I hope you learned how stacking unstacking works in conjunction with GroupBy, how melt works, and how we can use crosstabs to create chart aggregated charts from a data frame, although from a very simple example, and then also how to create dummy variables or dummy columns based on categorical variables. That was it then for this video. I'll see you all in the next video. Please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.